Good afternoon, Divya.
Good afternoon.
Fine.
Yeah, good afternoon, Mrs.
Good.
Good to see you.
Ashok,
Good afternoon, sir.
good afternoon. Acha, Ashok, how long will this talk be there? I was thinking whether you can come along with me at 4:30 for
Yes, sir.
meeting.
I'll come along, sir.
Yeah, I think that's
Sir, I'll start off and if I come to the office about what time? 4, sir?
yeah, that would be fine.
Yes.
Okay.
A very good afternoon, sir. Shall we start and make it live?
People are joining, so
So
Yes,
just allow
please.
me a moment. Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, sir. Just allow me a moment, please.
Yeah.
A very good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to the 23rd Water Talk being organized by National Water Mission and is supported by Water Digest. I'm Anupma, the director and editor of Water Digest, and we have with us Mr. Divyang Waghela, head Tata Water Mission, who will be delivering today's Water Talk, which is being planned on water security through springshed management in Indian Himalayan region. We have with us Shri G. Ashok Kumar, Additional Secretary and Mission Director, National Water Mission, who has been an integral part of this water talk. And we are very fortunate to have with us for the very first time, Shri Pankaj Kumar, Secretary, Honorable Secretary, Ministry of Jal Shakti. A very warm welcome, sir. And everyone, I would like to welcome you in today's talk. And now, without further ado, I request Honorable Ashok Ji to kindly propose the welcome address. Over to you, Ashok Ji.
Good afternoon, sir. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to Secretary, sir. Welcome, Divyang Waghela ji, and all the participants today. Today, this is the 23rd Water Talk and the 11th of the E-Water Talk of the National Water Mission. And this has really been a great, successful event for the last almost 2 years for the National Water Mission. And this is a very special Water Talk for us because normally Water Talks are held on 3rd Fridays. So this is probably a very rare event where it is happening on the not on the third Friday. This is the first time it's happening on the first Friday of a month. Second, it is the first time after the new secretary has joined. Pankaj Kumar sir has joined us, and sir has also consented to come and attend this program. So welcome, sir. So that's something makes this water talk unique again. And also, this is the first talk after the endorsement of our campaign Catch the Rain by Honorable PM in his Mann Ki Baat on 28th June. This is a great moment for the Ministry of Jal Shakti and the National Water Mission, because we had been pushing this campaign Catch the Rain for quite some time, and then it is very fortunate for us to have the Honorable Prime Minister endorsing our campaign and taking to a greater level, and much more high responsibility on us to push it further. That's all. But I welcome all of you and Anupama for the support the Water Digest and the team is giving. Sir, just for 2 minutes of introduction on the Water Talks, sir. The Water Talks was started on the World Water Day on March 22nd, 2019. We had envisaged it as a platform for water activists and water technical people and water theoreticians and academicians to share their ideas and to have a intellectual discussion. It went off well, sir. We had very eminent speakers like Mihir Shah, who is now drafting the water policy, Mr. Tushar Shah, Mr. Humashu Kulkarni, Mr. Shashi Shekhar, who was a former secretary, the Sachin Ocha, and these were the academicians and technical people, sir. And then we also had Mr. Anil Joshi, Sonam Mangchuk, Mr. Poparla Pawar, Pushpendra Bhai, etc., who were the activists in the field, who have done phenomenal work and transform the entire region in where they are working. And like Mr. Sant Balveer Singh Sichewal, Mr. Mahesh Sharma from Japua, Mr. Jyoti Sharma, the people who are associated in the water sector and who have done wonderful work in the field. They had come and presented their experience with us. In fact, two of the speakers got the Padma Award last year. Mr. Poparla Pawar got Padma Shri, and Mr. Anil Joshi got the Padma Bhushan Award last year, and we are proud of their association with us. We shifted the talk from physical platform to e-platform in May 2020, and this talk we have actually added as a special talk because we missed the talk last year on April. So I wanted to complete the set of 12 water talks this year. So that's why this water talk was added as a special, and we have a very special guest also for this special water talk. Apart from this water talk, when we shifted from the physical to e-platform, we had a lot of new insight we gained. Our reach went up very high. In fact, on the 18th the water talk, when the minister talked, we had about 2.5 lakh people live on this program, and we have many people linking up to our Facebook live. That numbers goes to about thousands and maybe 10,000 in the beginning, and by the end of the water talk, it reaches almost 30, 40,000, 60,000, 70,000 sometimes. One of the talks we had about, as I said, 2.5 lakh when the minister was talking. So that is the water talk about the water talk, sir. Apart from this water talk, we also have water tech talks every second Friday. We have water tech talks where technology is discussed for the engineers, cutting edge technology is brought in, and also every Saturdays we have this dialogues with DM. On every Saturdays from 3:30 to 5:30, we have about 5 DMs and 1 NGO every week coming and talking to us on their experiences. That's a brief introduction of what the talks which we are having. I'll take some 7 minutes of your time to show the showcase the National Water Mission in the profile video for all the viewers. Since Secretary is joining, it's the first time I thought this opportunity to show that video. Just a moment. Yes, this That was a short video on the activities of National Water Mission. Now, coming to today's special water talk, today's speaker is Mr. Divyang Waghela, head of the Tata Water Mission, trust which have really earned the trust of India, and the Tata Trust is one organization which has really earned the trust of India, and Tata Water Mission is a part of that trust. And it's a water and sanitation initiative of the Tata Trust. The Tata Water Mission was established to make a difference through rigorous and technologically advanced interventions, basically to integrate water and sanitation with livelihoods and women empowerment program. Three main themes of this Tata Water Mission is sanitation and hygiene, integrated with drinking water programs, and water resource management. And the three components, as per the website, is the quality, access and conservation, and sanitation and hygiene are the three main components of their mission. So very interesting area of work they have done, in geographically also spread out, and also with the subject wise also. They have done Springshed water management program in Uttarakhand. Springs is one area which everybody sort of misses out, but they have taken up a lot of the spring shed management in Pittorgarh district. They have also taken up the drought mitigation initiative in Maharashtra with the help of this Bharatiya Jain Sangatana, which is supporting the government's Medical Mukt Maharashtra Abhiyan. And a lot of work has been done under this Sangatana. And we have Springshed water management Northeast. A lot of work in the Nagaland also they have taken up. Wash projects in tribal areas of Rajasthan, and a lot of technology innovations, community managed iron and arsenic removal programs in Nalbari, Assam, fluoride removal systems in Dhar, Madhya Pradesh, water from air parts of Rajasthan, etc., and also the coastal area development projects in Gujarat. So our top speaker today is Mr. Divyang Waghela, who heads this Tata Water Mission, a very noble mission indeed, and also has made his presence in the field. We're doing a lot of wonderful work, and we're giving succor to many people who are actually deprived of the basic necessity of life, water. He was with the Asian Development Bank and came back to the non-profit sector in 2004, and was key person in implementation of large-scale community programs, decentralized wash program in Gujarat. So we all want to hear the wonderful journey the Tata Water Mission has done under your leadership, and we look forward for your talk. Mr. Divyang Waghela, please. Sir, before that, I want to request the secretary to speak a few words, because we have to leave. Our original program was secretary would be there for the program, but now I request secretary to make a for opening address, sir.
Well, I really don't have much to say except to express my happiness at this program, which is trying to spread awareness about water to all stakeholders and public at large. And it's very heartening to see that people who have worked in the field and have gained genuine experience, people who are being invited on this platform to talk about the ways in which we can manage water better. And I do hope that this initiative will go a long way. As Ashok has pointed out, Government of India is very keen to do interventions in the water sector. Jal Shakti Abhiyan was a major initiative in this direction. There are several mega initiatives which have been announced in the past and in the recent past, including in this budget, for management of water and sanitation. It's a very large problem. It affects all the spheres of our life. And as was mentioned in that video capsule which was shown, it cannot be addressed without everybody's participation. So that's what these talks should perhaps aim for, and that's what they are aiming for, to enlist the support of everyone by increasing the awareness. So I would stop here, and I would be devoting at least a few minutes to listen to Divyang's views on the matter. So I hand it back to Ashok to conduct the proceedings. And once again, thank you very much and all the best in your efforts.
Thank you, sir. So this would be available in our website also, because this will be a recorded version will be available. All the previous water talks are also available on our website, and a lot of people view after the program is also over. So we will watch Divyang's the recorded version, sir, because we have to go for a meeting. Mr. Divyang, we will be watching your program, but live, because I have to go for a meeting with secretary for this thing. So please continue your program, and please share your efforts what you have done, and also and also about the plans which we can work together in the future program. Thank you, Mr. Divyang.
Thank you very much, respected Pankaj sir and Ashok Kumarji, for this opportunity. It's a privilege to be a part of this forum, which I think brings a lot of right-minded people into the common platform to achieve the common objective. So really great to be part of this interaction, sir. So I just would like to start a brief presentation, specifically in terms of how the issues on the springs are being addressed. And I think the trust which has been in the space of water and sanitation over a period of last, I think 2 decades, but I think the consolidation of our efforts have been since 2015, when we started working a very small initiative called Tata Water Mission. We do understand that the water problem is quite a big in the country. And as Pankaj sir mentioned, I think it's important that all the stakeholders have to come together, join hands, and I think start working towards the common objectives. In last 5 years, specifically in the Tata Water Mission program, we tried to address 3 core areas. And we worked on the water security, specifically in the semi-arid and coastal regions. So there has a very peculiar issues of the salinity intrusion, which is, I think, one of the very critical factor in the country of India, because we have quite a long 7,000 kilometer long coastline. So we worked on that direction. We also worked in the different issue in terms of the Himalayan region, specifically in Uttarakhand, Himachal, Nagaland, and Mizoram, looking at the springs as a core, source of water. And I think the idea is that today, because we thought a lot of work has already been shared, and what Ashok Kumarji mentioned about very big practitioners in this space have already talked about many things. And I think I thought it's good we can actually put up a very small efforts what we have done and some learnings in the Himalayan region, specifically in the Uttarakhand, Himachal, Nagaland, and Mizoram. So thanks again for inviting me for this talk. So I just wanted to share with you, because when we talk about water has a very, very significant role in our lives, both drinking purpose. So we call it water for life, water for livelihood, and water for ecology. Water for life is specifically, providing the safe drinking water is the first element, which is the basic human right. So that's the one area which is, I think, linked with the water for life. Our maximum water, close to 85% of the water is being used for the agriculture purpose. That's again bringing livelihood to millions of our farming community members. So that is again a very critical factor in terms of our lives, our sustainability. And the third part is about the ecology. I think that is with the climate variation, the climate change, the restoring or conserving the ecology is another important issue, and water plays a very pivotal role in that space also. So as a strategy, we work in all these 3 areas: water for life, water for livelihood, and water for ecology. But today I would briefly talk about the water for drinking purpose, which is very, very critical in nature for the providing safe drinking water to our Himalayan region, specifically in the states which I mentioned earlier. What are the springs? And I think it's important because we know that it's being known as Dara, Prava, Nala. There are very different names which is being used for actually identifying the springs, and which are, I think, springs are areas on the ground that show groundwater outflow from the aquifer below. So that's, I think, the generally the springs are called. It has a cultural importance, it has a ecological importance, both for actually providing water to the rivers and providing water to the communities staying in the Himalayan region. What are the challenges in the issues specifically in the hilly part? I think if you look at in India, we have a Himalayan region which actually relies majorly on the springs as a major source, where we also have a Western Ghats and Eastern Ghats, which also has a more major reliance on the springs as a water source. As many of you are aware, that India has around close to 5 million springs, and out of that, around 3 million springs are in the India Himalayan region, which covers around almost 12 states, starting from the Leh Ladakh to the northeastern region. It's equally important that in these 12 states, this 60 to 70% of population, specifically in the Himalayan region, these springs play a very important role as a backbone, both for a drinking purpose as well as for agriculture irrigation purpose. And hence, I think the sustenance of this community is relying on the springs. And I think in terms of the numbers, around close to 5 crore people are actually dependent on the springs in the region. In ecology perspective, if we see, around 23.9% surface flow irrigation systems are based on springs. So that is, I think, quite a substantial percentage of amount is coming from the springs, which is actually providing us for irrigation systems. I think if we look at the challenges now, I know that over a period of last 5 decades, I think gradually over extraction of water or a changing in the consumption pattern, we have started facing new challenges in the water availability across the country, be it a part of the Rajasthan, Gujarat, Maharashtra, or southern India. But at the same time, in Eastern India and Himalayan region, we have been facing these water challenges, and which is becoming now more critical day by day. One of the report, which I think 2 years back, the NITI Aayog has come out in terms of what is the current status of springs across the country. And I think one of the very specific elements they have mentioned that nearly half of the perennial springs have already dried up or have become seasonal. So that is, I think, a very, very important and I think a very serious matter to look at in terms of the drying up the springs, or it becomes a very, very seasonal. So monsoon time only we get the flow. The discharge of those springs have gone down substantially, which has a very direct impact, both social perspective as well as on a livelihood perspective. When we work in Uttarakhand region, we found that because few springs are drying up, women have to actually walk up to 2 to 3 kilometers in the hilly region to just fetch the water of around 20 liters. I think that's the huge social burden on the women and adolescent girls who spend substantial amount of time in only fetching the water. I think thousands of villages are currently this kind of acute scarcity. But I think I also would like to say here that in last 5 to 7 years, I think substantial amount of efforts have also gone into bringing the focus on water security part by both the national government as well as the state government. And I think that effort will start giving us the results. And if these efforts will be continuing another for a period of a decade or so, I think there will be an opportunity that the self-sustainability on the water part will be achieved by all of us. We also need to look at springs into context of groundwater, specifically the wells. If you look at it, we have close to 30 million wells in the India, whereas we have, as I mentioned, around close to 3 to 5 million springs in the Himalayan region. And I think you can see that how much base flow it actually provides to the Indian rivers. So that way, springs are equally important as our bore wells or our wells are equally important. I understand that because a lot of efforts have been going on towards the well-based economy, because I think the groundwater sources are very critical and important for agriculture purpose. A lot of investment, public investment and private investment goes into the well recharging and things. I think the similar kind of efforts also required into the spring shade management going forward in future. What are the multiple dimensions? I think if we see, there is also a climate plays a very critical challenge in terms of the reduction in the base flow or reduction in the availability of water in the springs. Land use pattern has been changing now substantially. Land cover has been also now changing substantially. Also, the seismicity issues are also becoming now very frequent, and that also has a very direct impact on the the geohydrological formations, and which actually also impact the availability of water in the spring shades. I think with that context, it's very important that the efforts should be given, more effort should be given in the spring shade development. As many organizations, non-profit organizations and the government have been very aggressively working on the spring shade development in last, I think, 5 to 7 years of time. Some results, successful results have also been shown by many non-profit organizations and the government. I think if you look at the Meghalaya, which has been one of the pioneering in terms of the springs management across the state, and I think has shown a way to many other states to work on. I think what I would like to emphasize here that in the larger context, if you see in the macro perspective, if we see, if we need to look at addressing this problem, looking at the futuristic way, I think we need to try and see that how the spring shade can become a kind of a very nationally driven central focus area to work on. Currently, many states are doing an independent efforts on it, but I think there is a need to have a convergent effort at the national level, which I'm sure I think the National Water Mission is the right platform to take this whole agenda forward by bringing everyone together, specifically the state governments and some of the critical players, foundation, non-profit organizations, academic institutions, which play a very critical role, both in terms of action research program and also finding out good technology-based solutions to address the challenges in the spring shade management. What we have done as I mentioned, we have worked in Uttarakhand, Nagaland, Mizoram, and Himachal Pradesh. These are the 4 states we done some work. Because we are as a foundation, we have done very limited work, but we wanted to ensure that we develop a very strong proof of concept, which can then be taken forward by many like-minded institutions as well as the government as a policy. So if we actually build this whole ecosystem by building partnership with multiple stakeholders, we would be able to make a very significant change in that. And I think I would also like to share a small case study, which is also specifically in Uttarakhand, where one of the institutions promoted by the Tata Trust taken a lead in terms of bringing people together, and I think ensuring that the spring shade management taken as a very central focus solution in the state of Uttarakhand. And I think the similar approach also can be replicated in many other states. In the process, this 8-step methodology around 6 years back, when we started working with the communities in Uttarakhand, we thought of bringing them some kind of a systematic approach, methodology, so that I think we go into the right path, or anyone, any institution would like to work on this, they need to have a very strong standard operating procedure, we call it SOP. So they understand at what point of time action need to be undertaken. And based on that, which kind of a results can be achieved. And hence, we actually tried to build that ecosystem and created something called the 8-step methodology. There are many institutions who have joined this. It's a co-created model. It's not only the methodology created by us, but it has been co-created by many institutions. We have been part of this efforts going forward. One of the first element of this whole program is about doing a problem identification. And I think when you talk about problem identification, it needs to be having a convergence of 2 things. One, the scientific knowledge, and second, the traditional knowledge of the local communities. If we try to bring these 2 things together, I think we will be able to identify the problem more effectively. And hence, very first important step is about how you can engage with the community and bring them onto a board understanding the problem. The people who have been staying in those geographies, staying in those villages, they know their springs well, they know their ecology quite well, they know their forest quite very well. So it's very important that the people of that particular village, community, or a cluster of villages need to be a primary stakeholder of this work. So that is the very first step. The second step is important in terms of bringing the scientific knowledge into it. So scientific knowledge would require a very comprehensive geotagging of the springs and also doing the hydrological mapping. Every village or every region has a different kind of a geological characteristics, and it is very important that we understand those characteristics well. For that, it is important that we do the all hydrological mapping of that particular region, but at the same time also try to do the inventory of the springs. As I understand, there are some projects which actually focuses on creating a water atlas. So they are trying to create inventory of every springs in that particular region, whether it's currently running, whether it's dried up, whether it's a perennial, whether it's a season. They are trying to capture all the springs in that particular region. And I think that helps to understand in terms of what is the problem all about and how we can actually then get the diagnostic right, so that our solution or our strategy to ensure that problem is going away for a sustainable way can be designed effectively. The third part is about the established data collection and monitoring system. It's important that the data is very primary factor of taking any decision. Sometimes the conventional knowledge is important, but if you don't understand the pattern of the springs behavior, pattern of that, how the data are actually coming up in terms of the discharge level is going up or down, what is the correlation with the rainfall in that particular region, and hence I think the data collection process is very important. The data collection, I would say, important element, but it is not impossible. Many times people say we don't have a knowledgeable people, and hence I think the data collection becomes a kind of a secondary process. What we have actually undertaken, that we have trained the local people on the ground, and we have trained them how to do the data collection using the technological advancement into the benefits of this kind of a process on data collection and using that data for a decision support system. So that is, I think, very important element which we created at the grassroots level, social capital, the cadre of professionals within a village, which actually collects the data, provide it to us so that we can understand what is the pattern of the the springs and pattern of the particular geographies playing, and how we can actually use the data for making a right decisions. The fourth element is about the selection and capacity of building of cadre. As I mentioned, conventional knowledge is the most critical element of any development process. And the community, if they take the ownership, I think they will be able to only solve the problem. I know that there is one saying that the users are the best managers in terms of their finding out a solution for those problems. So if we can put users as a center point, make them as a managers, I think the whole process ownership is becoming very central focus for these institutions or a community institutions or people who are actually part of that particular geography. So that is very important. We need to provide them a technology knowledge as well as some support, so that I think they understand that the problem, where the problem lies and how they can find the solution. Our role is more as a facilitator. Our role is not to replace them and then find out the solutions and then implement that solution. We say that if they start working towards taking a leap towards the finding the problem and solutions, we can play a very critical role in only as providing that whatever technical, managerial, or maybe a financial support to those communities. The fifth part is about water balance. Many organizations have actually worked on the water budgeting element, I think, and this has been quite well accepted phenomena across the country now. Many watersheds have also taken water budgeting or water balance as a primary interventions to work towards the water security part. And I think the same approach needs to be taken here. As I mentioned first in slide, that water for life, water for livelihood, both are equally important. So for many departments or for maybe development practitioners, drinking water springs or irrigation water springs may be a different. But for user, ultimately there is a water they are going to use for drinking purpose, they are going to use for agriculture purpose. And hence it's important that they understand how much water they have. If you look at in one village, there may be 4 or 5 springs or sometimes 10 to 12 springs, and each springs actually have some flow, base flow or discharge. So they need to understand that what is the current water available with them, and why are they are using this all water, because they might be doing a only Kharif season cropping, they might be doing a partly Rabi season cropping, and some people with the lucky, if they are lucky and getting some water, they can also do the summer cultivation. So I think it's important that the water, what they are using either for agriculture purpose or for a drinking purpose. It's very important that the drinking water need to be secured. And once they understand the water availability, both demand and supply, I think they will be able to take the right decisions. As I mentioned, that the water security plan is a blueprint to be created based on the first 5 steps. And it's, I think, the community which actually plays a very critical role. They are the owner of the process. They need to create the water security plans. The technical, managerial, or financial support could be provided by the external stakeholder, any NGOs, or civil society organizations, or even in the government ecosystem. Once we created water security plan, then I think the responsibility comes with the panchayat or a community institution to do the implementation. And that implementation is based on the your scientific approach, based on what is the catchment area, what is the treatment area, where I think it needs the implementation or which kind of intervention need to be undertaken so that the water could be, more water could be stored, more water could be put into the back to the aquifer and could be available for a longer period of time. So that is the implementation part, which is more on a physical hardware infrastructure could be created. It could be a low cost, it could be a high cost, but it depends on what kind of a geography we are trying to cater to. The next part is about the setting up the protocols. The protocols, it's again a social norms, I would say, because the protocols are very important to sustain any infrastructure, sustain any process. So if we don't define the protocols, there are high chances that the things will fall back to the original situation down the line 2 or 3 years. So hence the community has to come together, defining those protocols, defining those social norms, and ensure that whatever water is being secured or protected or conserved need to be conserved for a longer period of time. It should not be used. So for example, in some of the villages, they say that after some specific period of time, so they also have a like controlled grazing. So that in some of the forest area, they say because this is our catchment area, we want to have a more vegetation here. They don't allow any cattle to go there. They don't even allow cattle to graze there. So that's, I think, they can actually sustain more moisture, soil and moisture conservation could be possible in that particular area. So the social norms could be very, very critical and important for the community to build. Once we build that social norms, and that can become a kind of a guiding principles for them for a longer period of time. Next part is about the evaluation. It's very important that what we do as an exercise need to be evaluated. And here the data again plays a very critical role. Once you actually do as a baseline, what is your discharge level? What is the water available? And when you start after doing an implementation, what is an evaluation? What are the impact of your work is showing? Whether it's underachieved, whether it's appropriately you are getting the right kind of impacts, outcomes, or you have to do some more work. Unless and until the data on the evaluation aspect is not being undertaken, you will not be able to see, okay, what next process need to be adopted. So it's very important that the evaluation process should be an inbuilt activity for every intervention on the spring shed being taken care by either the government or an NGO or the community institutions. So it's a very important element in the evaluation process. The last part about the operation and maintenance, which is again the part of a sustainability. We all know any organization, be it a government or a non-profit organization or a foundation, are not going to be perpetually working with the community. It's important that the community are a process holder and they also understand how to operate and maintain what they have created as an infrastructure asset, or they have created any other assets within the spring sheds or within that particular spring. That would require some kind of negotiation between the 2 or 3 more villages in terms of how they can protect those areas, how they can continue every year. They have to undertake some activities so that they should not fall back to the original situation where the water supply becomes a critical factor for them and water is not available. They may have more challenges going forward. To create a resilience of those challenges in future, they need to create this ecosystem of operation and maintenance. And again, they have to build some social norms. They have to allocate some resources. They can bring it either from the MNREGA funds. In the Himalayan region, there are a KEMPA fund. There is a forest department who provides funds. So they need to actually keep on finding out the ways and means, resources to ensure that every year they take minimum activities to ensure that the springs are supplying the same water, or actually the discharge should be increased over a period of time. So this is the whole 8-step process one has to adopt in the spring shade management. Wherever we actually implement program in these 4 states, we go through these processes, and I will share with you some results going forward. These are some of the photographs which I already spoke to you or spoke about in terms of how you to take the inventarization. I would request the National Water Mission also that if they can actually take up as an exercise that spring atlas is being created for many states have started this process, but every state if start working on a spring atlas, they will have a very rich inventory. They will have a very rich data points. And I think that is going to be very useful for the state government, district administration, multiple departments for deciding their budgetary allocation, or deciding their schemes are going to be functional or not. I would like to also highlight one very important point here, that all currently the Jal Jeevan Mission program, which is going to provide tap connectivity to 100% households by 2024. It's a very ambitious program, very, very innovative thinking process into it. And I think the community has been put at a central focus area. But I think if you look at the source sustainability aspect, which has also been given a very enough thrust in the guidelines of the Jal Jeevan Mission, if we look at the source sustainability, which is going to be very, very critical, if we don't have a source sustain, whatever investment on physical infrastructure is going to be made for supplying water will not be actually worthwhile, because the water is not going to be flowing from those pipelines. For that, it's very important that in future, not only 5 years, but 10 years or 15 or 20 years, the springs need to have the water. The spring needs to be sustained. And for that, this inventarization is very, very important. I also mentioned earlier there is the seismic changes, which also actually creates new springs. Sometimes the springs whole path is actually be changed. So we need to capture those things. And this knowledge needs to be documented well. It needs to be available with the panchayats so that they undertake the appropriate actions on future. It needs to be available with the departments, with whoever multiple department works on the spring shade management. It needs to be part with the district administration and the in a public domain, so that anyone would like to work towards the spring management element or spring rejuvenation element, they have this data available in a click of a mouse button. I think this putting up a public data into public domain is very important for bringing people and stakeholders together. We also try to create a barefoot geohydrologist. We train the local youth, and we actually train them and then provide them a knowledge so they can actually take the data on ground rather than someone externally to go and take the data. It's very important that the data need to be created reliably and on the ground, because in Himalaya, in the hilly region, the cost of data collection is going to be very high. The transportation is going to be very high. Availability of people is going to be high. The time taking in terms of traveling to the areas is going to be very high. Considering that, bringing the social capital at the field level, at the village level, at the habitation level is one of the, I think, the important factor for the success of ensuring the water's source sustainability into hilly region. This is the one example which I'm just trying to highlight here in the Pithoragarh district. We have actually geotagged all the springs. We have also, I will also share with you what kind of data we capture in those springs. But all this, almost 300 to 500, 300 villages, habitation specifically, have been captured to find out where are the springs. All geotagged, all the data are available with us. These are all available in the website of one of the organizations, which is actually working in the Pithoragarh with the support of Tata Trust and other foundations. The community ownership, I think I mentioned community ownership earlier also, but I feel I would again like to highlight one more point about the role of women. I think if we look at in the Himalayan region, in many states actually have been facing very serious issues of the migration. The youth actually migrate to the cities so that in a village, only women are actually there, and they actually play a very critical role. Fodder management is their one of the primary responsibilities. So they go to the forest, get the fodder and then feed it to the cattle. In that context, I think women play a very important role here, and I think that's why we are trying to see that all water committee, we try to see at least 50% of the women should be part of those water committees or water user groups. That actually plays a very critical role in terms of the community ownership. They take this role, they understand the drudgery of fetching water, they understand the drudgery of non-availability of water, which has an impact on their livelihood, availability of water for agriculture or irrigation purpose. So women plays a very important role, and I think we need to ensure that in every program, women should be put up into the forefront, specifically in the planning process or in the implementation process also. So that's why we say community ownership becomes a critical factor. The one panchayat or a gram panchayat, whoever is a part of a structure, need to be brought into this initiative where they need to play a role on water security. Here, I also would like to say that we need to promote a concept of a one water. For a different departments, as Ashok sir mentioned earlier, that different departments look at the different set of different requirement of water. But as a community, as a user, one water is a very critical factor. And I think we need to also start promoting one water concept. The government of India has also done the Jal Shakti Mantralaya, trying to bring all the water related issues into one under single umbrella initiative. So that's the same way need to be percolated down in the village level or a habitation level. And then hence, I think we will be able to promote this whole idea of water security by community or users as the best managers on water sources. There, right hand side, you can see some of the geohydrologists, barefoot geohydrologists have been trained. Now they can take the data on a regular basis. Once we create this kind of a scientific knowledge combined with the traditional knowledge of community, we need to create a potential groundwater recharge zones. This is some of the areas which we have done in the Himachal Pradesh, Sirmaur district, where you can look at the recharge zone, agricultural land, water body. So the recharge zone need to be very categorically defined, and the intervention should be undertaken in only those areas. If we undertake the recharge activities in those areas which not percolate down the water, which not has a good charge potential, then the whatever efforts we are going to do without having a scientific base will not be giving you a good results. Hence, it's very important that we need to provide a strong scientific support to it. I think if we use some kind of satellite data into it, if it's available, I know there are current challenges in terms of the availability of that kind of a data, but if the government and the academic institutions start working on creating those data, I think that would be very, very useful for the implementers, specifically the grassroots level government employees as well as the non-profit organizations, to use that data for an effective implementation of program. The next part is about the treatment. As I mentioned, this is something which we can see that there is a recharge area, which is in some different, it could be in different village also. It cannot be in the same village. It could be in the upper hilly terrain. So how you can actually do the recharge area, and specific area need to be earmarked for recharging on every year time. That's, I think, another area which someone has to understand in the geological cross section and work on that. This is again an example of Sirmaur district of Himachal Pradesh. This is some, again, blueprint what we have created for all villages. So where we create what is the recharge area, what is the treatment area, what is the stage contour, and what is vegetative plantation. So you can see that this kind of information, if it's available with the community, they can, and this is a blueprint, should be available with the community for a longer period of time. So once you do that, I think community can take effective implementation part. And that, I think, is important factor in terms of creating a blueprint, what I mentioned in the 8 steps in the earlier section. Again, the community to play a critical role in recharge works. People come for the labor contribution. People come for because they know that they are suffering from the water shortage, insecurity of water. They need to actually, they take the ownership. And once they take ownership, they do all this work. There are various means in terms of bringing the NREGA related funds, bringing the forest fund, there is bringing the Kempa fund. But if the community brings all those resources together, because the panchayat has a 73rd amendment, has a better power and better, I think, the responsibility as well as the finances available, so they can use and invest into the water management for a longer period of time, or a continuous basis, year by year, they can invest resources once they have a very clear blueprint available with them. One of the points I also would like to mention here about the process documentation. As I mentioned, the data is important. The data is important for the government or the implementer, but data is also important for the community. So this process which has been created called Dhara Janampatri. As we also have a Kundali for every individual, I think if we can also create a Dhara Janampatri or something Kundali for every spring, if we start feeding the data into it, I think that is a very rich process documentation, and that very rich data can be helpful for taking any decisions in future. Any stakeholder can take that, things. We are trying to promote this with the communities. We train the people, so they actually start building the Dhara Janampatri every quarter or every month. They take the discharge data, they put in into that Dhara Janampatri, and when some external go there, I think they understand what is the process of the springs behavior, and if the additional investment or additional intervention need to be undertaken, they can take it effectively. These are some of the works, some photographs of the Nagaland, some photographs are of the Uttarakhand. So this is, I think, the area where I think we try to build very strong interventions, the quality interventions on the ground. And then again, the quality can be ensured by the community institutions or the community itself. This is again some of the photographs of our work in Uttarakhand region. This is the process, some interventions being done by using the local material. If the external material, stones, bricks are not available, if it's a high cost, then you need to look at the local material which can be used effectively for storing water. How effective you can do that? I think you need to also scientifically understand that those materials are useful for the storing that water. I just would like to take a small case study of our work, which I think will give you a some glimpse of success of our interventions, which is a more community centric. The people actually take ownership, and then what we can got. Here, if you see the, I would say springs is a lifeline for Uttarakhand. Uttarakhand has around close to 39,000 habitations, and we have around 94% water supply systems are gravity fed. Gradually, there are multi-village systems are coming up, but most of the water sources are based on the springs. That is quite substantial amount of systems which actually are dependent on the single village water supply systems. Similarly, in Himachal Pradesh and Leh, in Leh, it's 72% water supply systems are gravity fed. In Himachal, 70% are systems are gravity fed. These are quite little old data, but in Himachal now they have actually moved towards the more pumping based systems. So they are actually lifting the water from the river basin and then providing it through multi-village water supply system. But largely, the springs are becoming critical supply of water in most of the cases across Himalayan area. And this is the data of our work in 200 villages, which we have undertaken in last 5 years on a spring shade management. And right inside, you can see some results. So we started our work in May 2016, and we have got the data in May 2018. 2 years of cycle, we have done some work. We have created a community institution, water user group, Pani Samiti. We created a comprehensive blueprint of the geological mapping using the geohydrology study. We have created the Dhara Janampatri. We have created a knowledge within the community, do the very strong social behavioral change with the community so that they took ownership. And after 2 years of intervention, we have treated around average 7 hectares per spring we have treated. And I think we could actually increase 48% in the lean discharge. And this is the summer to summer data. So you can understand the 48% water availability, additional water availability can solve in substantial amount of problems of the community, specifically on the drinking purpose. This project was majorly focused in the Gangoli block of Pithoragarh district, where our focus was on drinking water. But then we gradually started working on a water security concept, looking at the village, all the springs, how that catchment to be undertaken. That project started last year, and we are trying to see that if we get some good results, that model could be replicated by many other locations. And this is the, I think, the drinking water available every household. This is, I think, the dream the Prime Minister has seen for providing drinking water to every household, specifically the hilly region, which is facing very, very critical issues on water availability. I think once the spring shade water management would be taken into consideration on a source sustainability, I think this dream will be true for millions of people, specifically residing in the hilly regions of the country. This is a small action research program has been done in partnership with the Forest Department, just to demonstrate to as a in terms of the Pithoragarh district again, trying to see that how the spring shade management work helps in terms of capturing more water. So 4-hectare catchment area work has been done, and after that the water is available in the summer season in this particular area. And this is a kind of a demonstration. This is a part of a forest land that has been treated with the Forest Department, and then more water is available in this area. So that way, I think we have tried work with the different departments. The success, how you can take it on a scale, how you can take this kind of a successful models. It should not limit to a 1 or 2 or 10 organization. It needs to be scaled up in the mainstream government system. So with that approach, in Uttarakhand, our organization and our team who are working on ground, they are actually really the people who have been implementing these programs. They have created a consortium of non-profit organizations, and how they can actually take one step to 1x to 10x and 10x to 100x. So the first step they've taken a few civil society organizations who have been actually good knowledge on the spring shade management, and there the Tata Trust organization is a nodal agency in that project. And then they started investing resources. The Forest Department allocated annual budget for this, and all these NGOs have started creating the spring shade management into different districts of Uttarakhand. Now this is a very successful model. It becomes a part of a government ecosystem, and I think this kind of a model could be replicated in other parts of the country also. The similar approach we have taken into Nagaland, where Nagaland, the Land Development Corporation, the Rural Development Department, and the Tata Trust have come together and then implemented this spring shade management program across 11 districts. And that has also got a very good results now. And that project could also be expanded and scaled up, where the government means funding could be utilized for the physical infrastructure and the value addition on the behavioral change communication, bringing the innovative technological solutions, training and capacity of community institutions, or in barefoot geologies. That kind of a role we tried and played and facilitate the whole process in that region. So we need to look at how we can bring all the people to converge together, not at the national level, but also at the state level, at the district level, and also at the village level. Once we convert all the efforts, I think the point what Pankaj Kumar sir mentioned, that actually creating water secure villages is going to be the dream of everyone. I think the water need to be used effectively, judiciously. Everyone knows that, but everyone knows how to do that. That I think need to be promoted there. This small island of success needs to be converted into a large scale programs, mainstream programs, so that all the stakeholders can effectively work towards this. So that is a larger, I think, idea. And as I mentioned, the community need to be a center of every program. So this is the experience of the Tata Trust work in spring shade management in Uttarakhand, Himachal, Nagaland, and Mizoram. I think this is a great opportunity to share our small learnings. Many institutions, many organizations have been doing great work, and I think we got an opportunity to partner with many institutions to influence their thinking process. And I think this is the good platform for us to also support the government in their endeavor to ensure water, specifically for the hilly regions. Thank you very much for patient listening. I would be happy to answer any questions if you have specific to this learnings what we have from the ground. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Devangji. And now I think we should be officially opening for the question and answer session.
Yes.
Shall we open for the question and answer session, JP sir?
Sure,
ma'am. Please carry on.
Yeah. All right. So for all those who are joining us for the first time for the water talk, I would like to share that for the question and answer session, right in front of your screen, you can either post your queries in the chat box, or you have an option of raising your hand. Please raise your hand, and my team will unmute you, and then maybe you can put forward your query after introducing yourself. So now we are officially open for the Q&A. I can see a couple of questions coming in the chat box. Please raise your hands if there are any query.
I request Mr. Shaurad Gandhi, you may please ask your query.
Hi, my name is Shaurad and I am an independent consultant. My question is, do you think the lack of amenities around the Himalayan landscape contributes to the lack of awareness?
There is some background noise. There was some background noise. Can you just repeat your question, please?
I request Mr. Shaurad Gandhi, you may please ask your query again.
Hi, I repeat, do you think the lack of amenities around the Himalayan landscape contributes to the lack of awareness?
Yeah, I agree with your point. I think that's true. And I think lack of amenities across the Himalayan region actually has been there. And I think that's why that whole data, as I spoke about, data and knowledge around that is limited. It may be available also, but it's not into the a very consolidated manner available either at the one level. It may be a distorted availability, might be there, but currently what I experience that it's not very effectively available, and hence I think these are the challenges in the Himalayan region of the ignorance part.
I request Mr. Kirit Trivedi, you may please ask your query.
गुड आफ्टरनून ऑल ऑफ यू। सबसे पहले तो मेरी तरफ से बहुत बहुत बधाई हो नेशनल वाटर मिशन की, क्योंकि माननीय प्रधानमंत्री जी ने भी नेशनल वाटर मिशन का कैच द रेन वेयर इट फॉल्स व्हेन इट फॉल्स का उपयोग अपने मन की बात में किया था। मेरा प्रश्न वाघेला जी से ये है कि उन्होंने बताया था कि उन्होंने सैलिनिटी के बारे में भी और उसके बारे में भी कुछ काम किया था। तो सैलिनिटी रिड्यूस करने के लिए और सैलिनिटी इंग्रेडिएंट्स के कंट्रोल करने के लिए कोई कामगिरी उन्होंने की हो तो कहाँ पे की थी और कैसे की थी, उसका मार्गदर्शन करें। दूसरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि आइसबर्ग बनाने की बात अभी हम टीवी में देखते थे कि ठंडियों में ये लोग आइसबर्ग बनाते हैं उत्तरी प्रदेश में और उत्तराखंड की एरिया में, जो पिघलने के बाद उसका उपयोग पानी के उपयोग में किया जाता है। तो ये आइसबर्ग का सिस्टम कैसे उपयोग हो सकता है उसके बारे में बताएं। धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू त्रिवेदी जी आपके प्रश्न के लिए। अच्छा, सैलिनिटी के बारे में मैं आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि सैलिनिटी का काम हमने गुजरात के कोस्टल रीजन में किया है। सो गुजरात में आपको पता होगा जूनागढ़, जामनगर, पोरबंदर, भावनगर, अमरेली, पूरा जो बेल्ट है, गुजरात हैज द लॉन्गेस्ट कोस्ट लाइन क्लोज टू 1600 किलोमीटर। तो वहाँ पे जो कोस्टल सैलिनिटी इंग्रेज हो रहा है लास्ट अराउंड 30-40 ईयर्स से, उसके लिए हमने काम किया और उसमें दो तरह से काम किया। एक काम हमने किया कि उसमें देयर आर टू अप्रोचेस। एक तो है आप सैलिनिटी को मिटिगेट करिए, यानी कि सैलिनिटी को आप पुश बैक करने का प्रयत्न करिए। तो एक वो हमने काम किया, और दूसरा है कि आप सैलिनिटी को अगर पुश बैक नहीं कर पाते तो आप सैलिनिटी के साथ कैसे आप मैनेज करना सीखते हैं, सैलिनिटी के साथ अपना जो जिंदगी कैसे जीना सीखते हैं, वो एक दूसरा एक अप्रोच हो सकता है। वो दोनों अप्रोच पे हमने काम किया था और उसमें हमने दो लेवल पे काम किया। एक तो किया हमने कि सबसे ज़्यादा हमने मैंने कहा वाटर सिक्योरिटी के ऊपर बहुत ज़्यादा काम किया, वाटर हार्वेस्टिंग और रेन वाटर कंजर्वेशन के ऊपर बहुत हमने काम किया। और हमने वहाँ पे गुजरात में एक स्पेसिफिक डिपार्टमेंट है सैलिनिटी इंग्रेस प्रिवेंशन सर्कल, उनके साथ मिलकर काम किया। तो उनके साथ हमने बैठ के ये देखा कि एक तो है कि जो जितना पानी होता है वो कैसे सी में जाने से पहले उसको रोका जाए और एक फ्रेश वाटर बैरियर बनाया जाए। तो SIPC अराउंड लास्ट 15 ईयर्स से उस पर बहुत ज़्यादा काम कर रहे हैं, 20 ईयर्स से आई वुड से। तो वहाँ पे उन्होंने ट्राई टू डू द फ्रेश वाटर बैरियर बनाया है। तो जो समुद्र का पानी है जो अंदर जो आता है उसको वो पुश बैक कर सकता है। तो वो एक एफर्ट किया गया था गवर्नमेंट से, जिसमें हमने we are a part of that committee so that we identify which kind of areas need to be done there. सेकंड हमने जो किया कि जहाँ पे कम्युनिटी का रोल कैसे इफेक्टिवली लिया जा सकता है, वहाँ पे सिविल सोसाइटी ऑर्गेनाइजेशन को कैसे इंकॉर्पोरेट किया जा सकता है, उसके ऊपर हमने बहुत ज्यादा रोल किया. तो आपको शायद से पता होगा कि जो सिविल सोसाइटी के थ्रू सबसे ज्यादा जो वाटर कंजर्वेशन का काम हुआ है उसमें कोस्टल रीजन ऑफ गुजरात इज वन ऑफ द एरियाज, एंड उसमें लोगों को कैसे कम्युनिटी को एंगेज किया जाए उसके ऊपर एक हमने काम किया था. तो वो हमने एक सप्लाई मैनेजमेंट पे काम करके जो गवर्नमेंट ने किया उसको कॉम्प्लीमेंट कैसे किया जा सकता है उस पर. और दूसरा जो था इम्पोर्टेंट पॉइंट वो डिमांड मैनेजमेंट पे काम करना था कि आपको अगर पानी आपका अवेलेबल है उसको आपको एफिशिएंटली यूज करना है. तो आप कैसे वाटर एफिशिएंट मेजर्स कर सकते हो, उसमें आप माइक्रो इरिगेशन सिस्टम का यूज बढ़ाओ, आप सैलरी टॉलरेंट क्रॉप्स यानी आपके जो क्रॉपिंग पैटर्न को कैसे आप चेंज कर सकते हो जो सैलिनिटी के मिटिगेट कर सकते हैं. तो उस सब चीजों पे हमने काम किया है गुजरात के इस एरिया में. एंड आपको आई एम हैप्पी टू शेयर विथ यू सम मोर लर्निंग्स ऑफ अवर वर्क इन गुजरात विथ यू ऑन सैलिनिटी मिटिगेशन. सो दैट वो पहला आपके प्रश्न का उत्तर था. दूसरे प्रश्न के उत्तर में मैं आपको शायद से मैं कुछ उसका आंसर नहीं दे पाऊंगा बिकॉज मुझे इस बारे में ज्यादा जानकारी नहीं है. जो आपने कहा कि आइसबर्ग से जो बनाते हैं और उसको बाद में वो वाटर के लिए यूज कर सकते हैं, मुझे उसके बारे में नहीं है, तो मैं आपको उसमें हेल्प नहीं कर पाऊंगा.
ये एक्सक्यूज मी, आई जस्ट वांट टू ऐड ऑन. हमारा जो 7th वाटर टॉक था, इट वाज हेल्ड ऑन 20th September 2019. इसमें सोनम वांगचुक जी आए थे जिन्होंने वाटर टॉक डिलीवर किया था. And he explained the idea of ice stupa as one of the innovative water conservation technique. And he said that ice stupa is a form of glacier grafting technique that creates, artificial glacier used for storing, winter water in the form of conical ice heaps. And during summers when water is scarce, this ice stupa melts to increase, water supply for the crops and for the local usage. So अब हमारा वो रिकॉर्डिंग हमारे वाटर टॉक वेबसाइट हमारी वेबसाइट पे अवेलेबल है, वो आप देख सकते हैं. उससे आपको यू विल गेट टू नो मोर डिटेल्स अबाउट इट. थैंक यू.
I request
Thanks,
Mr.
Mrs.
Shrikant Mehta, you may please ask your query.
Hello. Hello.
Yes, sir, please go ahead.
Good evening to everybody. I am speaking about from BIOC Maharashtra. Just I want to clarity about Pankaj sir. We are implementing various springs development program in Himalaya region, Western Ghat, but there are the different spring development types. Out of the 5 spring different major types, which is the perfect scientific solution to solve the perennial water source of drinking water as well as agriculture purpose to meet the supply and demand side of that location. As per the experience or considering the scientific base, which is the perfect solution of spring shade development, types of the spring. Hello.
Yes, can you just repeat your last point?
Yes, majority there are the 5 springs in India to develop to solve the problem of drinking water or agriculture. But in especially North region and Himalaya, which are the best solution to coping mechanism, fulfillment of supply and demand efficiently mechanism. What are which types of spring is perfect solution?
Okay, so if I understand your point correctly, that to manage the supply demand aspects in the spring region specifically, you talk about that which kind of a springs you need to take into consideration for your rejuvenation part. So I think what I understand in terms of based on the geological conditions in different regions, we need to identify what are the base flows are available from all the springs in that particular region. So when we take a springs, we try to look at we try to look at the area of that particular spring across, and it can go beyond one particular area. It can go to 3 to 4 villages also. And then we try to see that how this catchment area need to be identified, which needs to be treated so that the water will be available for all the sources within that particular springs, which could be done. Now, if you look at the demand and supply gaps, I think it's a very important point where we need to look at how the the community uses those water both for drinking or agriculture purpose. Our experiences has been that some of the drink sources, specifically springs, are being used only for the drinking purpose, and some of the springs water are available for the irrigation purpose. And for the irrigation purpose, they also create channels to irrigate their lands. So we try to see that what are the best way in terms of a performance of those springs, and that's why I said the data is important to take for some specific period. And after understanding those springs behavior, we try to see that which spring need to be taken into priority in terms of the recharging mechanism to be adopted for that. So that is the way we try to do that in terms of the identifying the springs. So that's the way we generally try to solve that problem.
I request Mr. Jagdish Basin, you may please ask your query.
Hello.
Yes, Mr. Basin.
Very good afternoon to all the dignitaries and Madam for granting this chance to ask a question. Sir, it was a very good presentation indeed for the whole lower Himalayan regions and upper Himalayan regions. What I want to know is what percentage of the total water demand can be met from the springs?
Okay. Again, I think I may not be currently having the right kind of information available with me to answer your question. But if you talk about specifically to specific areas, then I think we need to find out what exactly the water demand. In drinking water perspective, I think we find that almost 100% demand is being met from that particular region. But if you are talking about on a macro perspective, that in whatever the spring based flow we have and how much it can actually fulfill the water demand, that I'm sorry, I don't have that data right now available with me.
All right, so there are also certain queries in the chat box, and so I would like to share. There's one put forward by Dr. Gurjar, who says how springshed management is different from watershed management.
Okay, interesting point. I think the principles are more or less same. It's nothing to do with a very different. Watershed is generally we do it into the our arid semi-arid regions. I think the springshed management, whether we are focusing on majorly on the springs area in Himalayan areas and hilly regions, eastern, as I mentioned, western and eastern Ghats. So I think it's principles are same. The approach is more or less same. There is no major difference on these two areas, two kind of water sources.
Mr. Rana,
I have also seen one comment there. Generally, the common water resources are poorly managed because everyone wishes to harvest it, but for management stakeholder hesitate coming forward. There are conflict in sharing the water resources, so how to overcome from such problems. I think if you want, I can answer that point, and I think there is some very small learnings on that we have in experience.
Please go ahead.
Yeah, I think you are very right in that, because the water is becoming now a scarce resource. It's important that and the conflict is bound to arise on that. So when you actually, as I mentioned earlier, that we need to work more on a community institution building aspects on that. That could be a transboundary challenges on conflict. So there are maybe sometimes, specifically when we work in the springs, there are the source of the spring catchment is in some other village, whereas the water discharge is coming to some other village. Then obviously the how you can actually engage the other village to do some work in the catchment area. So that way it's important that, and we started looking at now, can we look at the water user federation as a kind of a community institution model to address this challenge. And as I think laws and means, I think may not be an effective way to do that. But if we actually create some community institution as a kind of a federation on a transboundary related issues, putting up a multiple water user groups or panchayats together, I think they will be able to find out the right solutions to avoid the conflict part or reduce the conflict part. And this becomes a kind of a part of a social norm or a social cultural perspective. It is difficult, I think, to drive. Sometimes the conflict should not be there. If everyone start getting enough water, then I think the conflict would be resolved. But I think that's going to be a very, very complex problem which everyone has to work towards solving that issue.
Mr. Singh is wanting to know, Rana Singh, at many places springs have dried up, which has impacted water supply scheme. How spring can be made sustainable for long term?
Pardon, sir? Can you come again?
At many places, springs have dried up, which has impacted water supply scheme as well. How can the spring be made sustainable for long-term basis?
Yeah, so I think again, as I mentioned, there is a 8-step approach what we have explained in a greater detail. There is a possibility if we can, and it needs to have a continuous engagement process. It needs to be continuously implemented with the local community. All the stakeholders has to be part of it. If they actually adopt it as a kind of a regular process, then I think the sustainability part could be ensured. And I think that's why the whole approach of this 8-step methodology can be adopted by the people of that particular users can come together and work on that. That is, I think, the area which I feel is important to work on.
Okay. So Mr. Jose is wanting to know, in the various spring inventories carried out in various Himalayan states, have you come across some quality issues that need to be addressed? If so, what is the kind of strategy being followed for addressing the same?
Okay, so if you talk about the quality, either it's a microbiological contamination is the one I think generally we found. In the areas where we work, we have not found any kind of a chemical contaminations. So I don't have any kind of an issue in terms of data specifically in the chemical contamination in terms of water quality has come. But if it's a microbiological contamination, I think the disinfection is the best way to do that if it's being used for other drinking purpose in that particular area. So that is I think the answer I would like to just say. But we have not found much challenges in the water quality at this point of time in the springs where we have worked on. I have one question. I think how do you see the synergy with the Jal Jeevan Mission, which now promotes source sustainability in its new guideline? Thanks, Mr. Rathod. I think it's a very important question, and I think we had an opportunity to work with the Jal Jeevan Mission program around a year back, and I think specifically on the spring shade part. So we worked with the ministry team, and then we supported in terms of building this whole spring shade management guideline, which could be integrated with the Jal Jeevan Mission program, because the source sustainability is very critical factor into ensuring the functional household tap connectivity. So that way we work with them, and that there is a specific guideline on the spring shade management which has been issued by the Jal Jeevan Mission in the source sustainability. So that guideline could be also used by the states for ensuring source sustainability efforts are taken care of in the implementation of the Jal Jeevan Mission program schemes. So that needs to be an integrated part. We are also trying to see that it needs to be a part of your DPR, the One Village Action Plan. You prepare the source sustainability should be an integrated part if possible, and then you look at the holistic solution for providing that water.
I request Mr. Pramod Verma, you may please ask your query. I request again Mr. Pramod Verma, you may please ask your query.
Anyways, we move ahead with the next question. So there is a question which is put forward by Mr. Dorji, who says spring rejuvenation in cold desert zones where main source of water, spring water, is snow melt. Now issue is if there is no snow in winter, the effect, what will be the effect on spring and other sources in that area? I don't know, Divyang, if you can connect with the question and can take it up.
No, I can connect the question. Unfortunately, I don't have an answer right now. One of my colleagues, specifically in the Leh, based in Leh, have done some work on this. So I would request, I would maybe if get some details of this person, I can, give some answers later on. I can actually send them the detailed process, what we have done in the Leh, specifically on the spring shade management aspects. So I would be happy to share that.
How various region-wise spring type appropriate solution for development to meet perennial drinking water as well as irrigation water need.
Okay. Yeah, so Spring Shade Management Consortium is basically a formal body which has a steering committee in the state of Uttarakhand, which has been chaired by the Forest Department, PCCF cadre person. So what happened? I think the guideline of that, what actually need to be undertaken as a part of a spring shade management by multi-stakeholder partnership defined. The Tara Trust organization, associate organization, is a steering is a part of the convener in the steering committee. So what they do generally have a quarterly meeting of those all the stakeholders to come in, and they work on a specific area. So there are institutions and organizations who have some specific expertise. Some has a very good expertise in the training and capacity building. Some has a very good expertise in the behavioral change communication. Some has a very good expertise in terms of creating a barefoot geohydrologist. So there are different kind of different kind of people available, skill set available within the organizations. So as a part of that, they are these SMC actually become a platform at the state level, not only in terms of exchanging the ideas and knowledge, but also converting them into kind of a implementable guidelines. So once this knowledge are actually based on some evidences, strong scientific evidences are available, that could be converted into implementation guideline. And then the all stakeholders start implementing those approaches or processes in that particular geography. So I think once you actually, you can replicate your successful models into a large scale. So that is the way this collaborative platform helps in terms of all stakeholders to work in a common direction. So all districts are actually working towards this spring shade management area in Uttarakhand and other parts. So that is one good way to do that. Similarly, in Nagaland also we have created a collaborative platform where there are 2-3 different departments working, but because they have some different approach and the financial allocation and some limitations on that, we play a role of facilitator. So we actually create a community institutions, and all the resources which are available from either of the department are leveraged for that particular organization. And whatever the learnings are there being shared at the state level steering committee. I think this is the state level institutional mechanism is very critical, not only for knowledge sharing, but also creating a policy for better implementation processes.
Thank you, Divyangji, for taking up all the queries. And as of now, I don't see, many queries in the chat box, and also there are no more hand raised. However, still during the course of time, if anyone feel like putting forward any more queries, you may please write to either National Water Mission or to Water Digest. And with this, I think we will close the question answer session. And moving ahead, I now request Shri JP Singh Ji, Deputy Secretary, Department of Water Resources, River Development and Ganga Rejuvenation, Ministry of Jal Shakti, to please propose formal thank you note, sir. Over to you, JP, sir.
Completed 20 water talks. And as you all know, the water talks used to be conducted on a physical platform till February last year. From 13th water talk held in May last year, we switched over to electronic mode, which helped us to expand the reach to an extent that 18th water talk, which was delivered by our minister, it witnessed a participation of approximately 2.4 lakh persons, as Ashok sir also told in his welcome address. I, on behalf of National Water Mission, extend a hearty vote of thanks to today's speaker, Mr. Divyang Waghela, head Tata Water Mission, for sharing his ideas and experiences on water security through spring shed development in Indian Himalayan region. We know springs are natural point of sources of groundwater discharge, and they have been vital source of groundwater in all the mountainous regions across the world. Millions of springs, they form the lifeline for the people of Himalayan region, sub-Himalayan region, Eastern Ghats, Western Ghats. Today, talk of Mr. Waghela highlighted the water security scarcity issues in hills and spring shed development methodology by integrating science, social science, research, and implementation. Thank you very much, sir, for an interesting talk on a very important topic. I extend my sincere gratitude to Secretary, sir, for gracing this occasion on with whose valuable guidance has been instrumental in organizing the water talk and making it a successful event. I'm grateful to our Additional Secretary and Mission Director of National Water Mission, who has been the backbone of water talk, and without whose guidance and support, we would not be perhaps able to reach to almost the end of the second year of the water talk. I want to thank you who are all connected on this water talk platform and for making this discussion an interesting forum. I am feeling in my duty if I don't extend my special thanks to those participants who have been sort of attached to the water talk series and have been attending this series on regular basis. My special thanks to them. I convey my thanks to Water Digest team who have been our partners in organizing this water talk series and whose continued support to the water talk events have made this series a memorable one. Lastly, I would thank the National Water Mission team for extending full support in organizing the event. Lastly, thanks everyone for joining us today. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you, everyone. We look forward to your participation in all other upcoming Water Tech Talk and Water Talk. Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you.